subject, portrait photography. And questions, if you have any questions, ask them during the presentation, otherwise you probably feel like
Just
you
interrupt.
forget them. And we've got our two portrait photos, Greg and Pam. But remember this is a twofold situation tonight. We want to help people maybe be able to take better lit portrait type photography, but we also want people to understand what it takes to photograph at our honor flights, okay? Because I'm telling you, we are in trouble. We do not have enough photographers.
Look at your photography.
We've got those
You're
that are there every time, and it's a 4-time-a-year commitment. And I've already told honor flight people, if we can't get more help, we're gonna have to pull out of it, and that would make me sick, okay? So it's twofold, learn a little more about that, okay, and maybe have enough courage, because the thing is, you could be a landscape photographer, you could be a macro photographer, you could be any type of a photographer, but if you don't know portrait or much about portraits, it doesn't help to be a landscape photographer or something else. So anyway, what we're gonna do tonight, they're gonna talk, give demonstrations, show lighting, posing, things like that, and then at the end, we'll take their images and project their images and show their images. So anyway, with that, we want to turn these lights off.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Be fine.
You don't know me, I've been excited to talk to a couple, I've not been to any of the meetings here. My name's Tim Brandenburg, been a member since it pretty much originated. And my background is law enforcement. I learned this through crime scene work. Back in the day, we didn't have civilians like we do today. And so I was fortunate enough that I could apply with the FBI. They would fly out to Quantico and they'd condense semesters into weeks. And so I'd go out there for 2 to 3 weeks a year, multiple times over my career to get my degree and to do what I had done for the Davenport Police Department for the majority of my career. That's how we connected. He was working for the Quad City Times, so we'd be on the same crime scene. He'd be taking the pictures for the Times, I'd be taking for the police department. And then lo and behold, we had children the same age.
He'd come over to me every crime scene and say, hey, you interested in doing wedding photography? I'm thinking about doing wedding photography.
And that was kind of a funny thing because a friend of mine said, hey, will you shoot Stephanie's wedding? And his comment to me was, this can't be any worse than shooting a homicide. So led into it. I actually borrowed the department's, my crime scene camera that we use for major crime scenes and shot his daughter's wedding. And I shot the wedding on a Saturday, presented pictures to him on Sunday. Didn't know squat about a whole lot other than what I did for the police department. So it was a learning curve. They were totally excited because they didn't think, okay, I shoot a wedding one day and get pictures the next day. That was back in the film days.
Basically, he never shot a picture of anybody that wasn't laying prone.
That's right. So when it kind of kick-started me a little bit, kids would have me bring crime scene chalk, my handcuffs, different things like that. So we had a lot of fun with it in addition to doing their pictures. So a lot of the kids at first knew me. The guys would get handcuffed and they would have to take the garter belt off because they couldn't use their hands. And so that was a fun thing. So I did rope him into doing a few weddings with me over the years. I shoot 20, 25 a year in addition to my full-time duty. So it got to be kind of a hectic schedule, but it was fun. And then so it kind of led into learning more. I bounced ideas off Greg, learning a little bit about, because obviously he worked a whole different gamut than I did. I worked a lot of flat lighting. We wanted to show a lot more as you see it versus trying to disguise anything, because when they presented to a jury, they wanted to see exactly what was out there that we were looking at for evidential purposes. Fast forward a few years, again, we started working together and I started getting some information from Greg and
Well, the thing about being in a newspaper situation is we do a lot of work. Most of what we did was called environmental literature. So it would put a subject a center of interest in his environment. So there was a lot of portraiture with wide angle lens because he was in an office setting, he wanted to show his office, something about who he was. And, but in the, by doing that, I learned a lot about portraiture that I didn't think I would ever need to know. And one thing I learned about, which might be of interest to you guys, is that we always had to travel light. And it was usually a flash. First it was flash on camera. We would, the flashes, even back in those days, would tilt. And we put a little 4x6 file card, or if we wanted to get really fancy, we'd take a bottle of rubbing alcohol. It was kind of a frosted thing, and we cut it off, slide it on there. It seemed to fit just perfect on like the guitar 283, if you are familiar with those flashes. And we just we'd either have it on a coiled cord, we'd hold it off camera as we're taking the picture. Just the main thing I want to let you know tonight, I hope you take away from this, is for best portrait photography, you really want to get that flash off the camera, away from the lens. And so you get some modeling, and then softening. There's so many different ways, and there's so much money you can spend on diffusion systems and things like that. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to touch a little bit on a little bit of that to give you some ideas, and maybe not go out and feel like if you want to do portrait. Does everybody want to know about portrait photography? Do you really? I was going to recommend a good barbecue place just down the street. Okay, all right, then we'll stick with it. So anyway, yeah, we're going to show you some things so you're not going and buying something and saying, oh, that didn't work. And there's going to be things that we'll show you in different price ranges. So based on your budget and how much you want to spend to get good results, these are some options for you. And like Jay said, you can stop us at any time. We won't be offended. If you've got something that you've got a question about, just hold up your hand or just yell it out, and we'll answer that question as best we can. So with that,
Basically, what we're gonna do is go over, like Greg was saying, different items that you can purchase. I got two of my setups here. One's new to me, so I'm actually still learning it. That's the one over here, the camera here. I jumped to my Sony A9 II over the winter. So using it in nature, I learned that right away because I was able to, I hang out with Mike Fitzgerald, Larry Williams, both those guys, and they are great resources for me in learning the A9 II. And actually that's Larry's A9 II because he went out and bought the A1. So when he wanted to trade it in, I'm like, I'll take it. And so, because I was working off of the 5D Mark IVs, so I've used Canon my whole career. In the police department, we used Canon other than when they first started. Film days, it was K1000s, fully manual cameras, the Vivitar flashes. We used barn doors for lightings out there, just model lights. And we did use flash. A lot of that was for bruising and stuff that we could show. And we use it off camera, like Greg was saying, the best way to use a flash is off camera. We could use it for fingerprint work, we could use it for shoes, and in this work, it's the same thing. You're looking at documenting your subject matter and trying to create that appealing look for them. So basically what I got over here is a real simple system. It's a flash, umbrella. You can use I have used radio poppers, they're affordable, because in my studio, I actually developed a studio during my career, and so I had a place where we could do babies and different things. When I was doing a full-fledged studio, I had a rail system. I built a house with a studio in it instead of renting a place, and we did that for 15 years, and then I sold the place, and now I have a little studio set up in my basement for some of my old clients. But this system here is real easy to take out with you. You got a simple umbrella. This has two, you can see on the inside, one's gold, one's silver. And what that'll do is it'll blend the flash. A gold a gold one, you can get solid gold, will give you more of a warm tones. The silver will give you a little more brighter tones. And so it depends on your situation you're shooting at out in the outside or in your house or in a location. You may want to use one or the other. This is nice because it's got the blended. You shoot into it and your subject matter's out here. And again, there's different radio control options you can have. I got a new flash here, so I can't use this with this particular flash. I use this primarily with my white lightnings that I have in my basement. But this kind of gives you an idea. And you can go to Ted, and he's got little package deals with Fodex and some of those companies, and he can set you up pretty reasonably with something similar. Or like this one here, Greg actually turned me onto this one, which is nice, because the flash gets stuck right in here, and you screw it in, so it's very secure. You don't have to worry about it losing. And I got a weight on here, so if I use it outside, it's not going anywhere. I mean, we have to have pretty gusty winds. And if it were to fall over, it's gonna fall, you can see this has been out and been used quite a bit. It'll fall over and land on the sides, and your flash is gonna be pretty safe. So then you got a triggering mechanism that triggers that light. And what I have here is a portable, so when I've done some business portraits, these are really nice backdrops. You can take them with you. They pop up really any location, and you can get different colors, different things you want on that. And then again, like I was talking, you can use one flash. You don't need multiple flashes. One flash works. One side of this is silver, one side is the gold. You can take it off and be white. You can actually use that as a shoot-through option as well. So again, this is very important. Sure.
You will, if it's a paying job, you will get paid more if you use multiple flashes.
Right.
Because you look like you know what you're doing.
Bring the biggest camera that you've got.
That's right.
Everybody always looks at your camera and your lenses because they're used to shooting with the little point and shoot and the little cheap lenses. And they say, man, that stuff costs some money. I said, yeah. I said, but I want to have good images for you, so your glass is very important. And so like I said, Greg says sometimes shooting light, like I said, I do dentist offices and stuff like that, where you go into the location. Greg will do a lot of on-site portraits. So we use a two-light system. I use a skimmer like this to shoot through, and I'll use an umbrella to fill. And so most of the time, even like when we do the honor flight, I'll take my white lightnings with because I plug them in, they're very constant, and I'm real comfortable with using the white lightning lights. And we're gonna bring a set tonight, but miscommunication on two of our
I
parts.
filled up my car, so that's good.
So then what we take and do at the honor flight, and Joe's been there and a few others been there to help out with the folks, we have this big gray muslin backdrop, and we fold it over the top, so we actually have the same muslin on both sides. So what we do is Greg sets up on one side, I set up on the other side.
And we have two separate series of lights. We've got, they're controlled by radio slaves, but they're on different channels, so we're not firing each other's lights. That's something we have to be careful of.
Yeah.
And we run it, I call it the Walmart portraiture, because the veterans show up in a line, and you just go next, and he comes over, he sits on a little stool, we get a picture of him. First thing we do is get a picture of him with his name badge right under his chin, and that the helpers are fantastic for that. And so now we know who he is, so that comes down, and we take 2, 3, maybe 4 pictures. Kind of depends on the guy. I mean, you can tell when you've got the shot sometimes, but there's always that chance that he blinked as the shutter, closed or opened and closed. And so we take a couple of them, but we don't spend a lot of time, okay, just turn a little bit more this way, turn a little bit more that way, because we have 1 hour. And I don't want to scare anybody away from doing this, but you've got to be kind of ruthless and still thank them for their service and wish them well on their day as they're heading out. But we've got to keep it moving. And the helpers that we've had in the past have just been wonderful. I think we've decided what they would do is they give them a little ditty bag that they can put stuff in. That's the first thing that they do when they get into the terminal. Well, first thing we do when they get in the terminal is take that bag off because we don't want it hanging around their neck for the portrait. So we've got that squared away. We think they're going to get it after with the portrait on this next one. So that should speed things up. And then we've decided we don't care if there's a third hand in that first picture with the name badge. So we're gonna let, instead of having them hold it, because most of the time they don't even know what I'm talking about when I tell them hold this up underneath your chin. But not only that, but it needs to be tilted a little bit down so you don't get glare off the split plastic from the lights. Because if you get glare and it's washed out, you don't have a name. So,
Jay can contest to this because he and his group usually work our pictures that way.
We have 4 of us that edit the images, and there's usually between 90 and 100, 90 and 110 images. And last year, you guys, the last time it was really great. We only had one we had to really try to figure out, and it was because of glare.
yeah.
And the biggest challenge in doing any kind of portraiture work is the glasses. And that's because people that have high-end glasses, they have glare resistance, so you don't have a real issue. The lower-end glass that some put in is you do have an issue. And thankfully for Laura, she's able to do a lot with them, even if we do our darndest to make them so we don't see that. And what's that?
Lower-rate glasses, does that do any kind of effect on?
Polarized ones that are darkened.
Yeah.
And usually, if they're dark, when they come in there, they're gonna be dark anyway because of the amount of windows that are where we shoot and such, so we'll just ask them to take them off so we can see their eyes. And
I haven't had anybody that
That's
look like
that's
they're
what
wearing
we're-
sunglasses.
yeah.
I mean, no, we start, 5:30 in the morning, so not big. As far as glasses go, the other thing is, if they have flat lenses, they're a lot better than curved lenses, because curved lenses are gonna pick up reflections from multiple directions. The other thing that we worry about is hats. And what we've kind of taken to do is ask them to just push their hat back a little bit on their head. And a lot of them will say, oh, I can just take it off. But their hair, after wearing a hat for any length of time.
especially at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and so, no, just leave it on, just push the brim up a little bit. And
And another way that we can try to compete with that is our light setup. Typically, both our lights are gonna be more out front, and we'll show you our exact setup that we do at the location. Like I said, differences is Greg's using, these these are great for going out, in the field. And they're wireless, they're, no batteries to them. Before you'd have to have a cord going to a battery pack to keep them operating.
And let me tell you, it has been discussed that the club may buy lights for this, because we're that committed to Honor Flight. So, at some point, there will be a primer on how to use these lights. The one nice thing about,
Excuse me, I had a second break.
you have a question, sir?
That's definitely something we are thinking about, talking about, but unless we can get the photographers.
Right.
That's
What I wanna say is,
there's no deal with photographers.
these are pretty easy to work with once you've done it a little bit, and it makes sense. And that's why I like it. Everything is self-contained. In the light, you don't plug them into an outlet anywhere, you don't have to attach a battery pack anywhere. The battery is right here. Everything is self-contained. And this will last for something like 1,500 full charge pops. And we don't do anything like that. And we're not doing full. There we go. We're not doing full dumps. You can also use them as a TTL if that's where your comfort level is. But I prefer to use them on manual. And by that means I would set one, typically I'll set this at 1/8 power. This one I would set at 1/16 power. Maybe I may vary it just a little bit depending on how they look. But what you want is soft with directional light that will give some modeling, and so it's not, flat in your face lighting. It looks like a portrait, and it works really well. And once you get it down, and they're fired by this little thing. So once you set this up, you can put this on the hot shoe of your camera, and it will tell you where each light is as far as whether it's on TTL or manual. If it's on manual, it will tell you what power it's gonna fire at. If you wanna change that, you pick the light that you wanna change, and there's a little wheel here, just like on most cameras anymore, and it will go up in 1/3 increments, up or down, depending on how you wanna ratio those lights. So it works out.
Most of those triggers, you can operate as many as 5 lights, sometimes 6. So depending on what you have set up on that contraption, that transmitter, you can use that many flashes, and it'll tell you flash A, flash B, flash C.
I think this one will do 5, and I don't know anybody in here that's gonna be more than 5.
Yeah,
5 lights and 5 different channels.
I was gonna say, most that Greg uses is 3. When I shoot the honor flight, I use 2. And like I said, it just,
And the only reason I use 3 is I kinda like to put a backlight that, I use this one actually. That, I'll take this dome off, but it's got a honeycomb on there, and so what it does is it narrows the beam of light, but it feathers it out. So that you put this right behind their shoulders, and it lightens the backdrop, but then it falls off to dark. And it's a nice look. I like it. I've had instances when I don't use that the backdrop, not necessarily this one, but another one that I use, the background goes so dark that if they have dark hair, you kind of start to lose them. Or if they're wearing like a dark sport coat or something like that, you need something that kind of separates.
Does that light get mounted too? Is it mounted?
Yeah, this one I'll mount to that little
right behind the
little light
person.
stand right there.
you might be more familiar with called a snoot.
No, I don't
This is,
know.
I'm just saying.
I'm not familiar with anything.
Watch your mouth.
A typical backlight, a lot of times, until they come out with these fancier ones, you'd, like with my white lightnings, I had a third white lightning, I'd set behind them, and it had a little white curvature dome on it with the front, where the back side was open. It's called a snoot. So what it'd do is it'll flash behind the subject that you're
I
shooting.
have a question.
Sure.
With the hats, you
Mhm.
know, you get that shadow.
Why did you wait so long to ask that question?
Well,
Been thinking on it.
what if you just have like a little light, a soft light down on the ground that kind of,
You could do that, but it's one more
thing.
thing to add, and then you got to get it out of the way before.
And when you're doing mass production, in a studio setting, what you have is you actually have curved reflectors, and you can use the curved reflectors in the same way, same manner. So like, so typically what we'll do out there is we'll take this light, we'll set it on one side,
And it's
have
down
it
lower.
have down lower, little tilt to it, so it's shooting up and catching that brim of the hat, because 95 or 99% of the guys are wearing hats.
Yeah.
And then this light here is gonna be shooting this direction, and we're catching, that way we're having a nice level of lighting on them, where we have a main light and a secondary light or fill light.
And now when they come in, we typically have them come in this way, sit down. This is my main light. So let's say this is at 1/8 power. This will be my fill light at 1/16. So I have them turn their body this way and then look at me. I would be right out here. And so we're not doing this, because if they're overweight, that's not very flattering at all. Anytime you can, turn somebody a little bit, but you don't want them in profile either. So about 45 degree is a good number to know. I have this at 45 degrees above their head and 45 degrees off from them this way. And this one, I fudge a little bit with, different ideas. Typically, I will get this one almost like that. Because what it will do is, even though it's, it's a very soft and spreadable light, it will sometimes put a little edge on their shoulder to separate them from the background. It will also get underneath their hat brim, and it will also fill in this side of their face, so they don't have really harsh shadows over here, which if I shot this by itself, it might do that. Now, the other thing while I'm thinking of it, a lot of people think that, okay, you point the light straight at the subject's head. You actually turn it a little bit so that it's kind of going past this way. What it will do, it will wrap that light around and it will pick up, fill in some of the shadows over here along with this one. And when you're doing it as fast as we are, there really isn't time to take a shot and say, oh, okay, I gotta move this light a little bit.
Usually we grab Joe or somebody, sets him in the chair, get what we got a good feel for is how that's gonna look,
Yeah.
and then go with it. And we may have to make a minor
Joe becomes our
adjustment.
first victim.
Yeah, and I think I use Judy as well. Like I said, we typically grab one of the helpers, do our test shots. We feel good about what we're gonna shoot, and then run with it because like Greg was saying, it's bang, 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 because they're getting them in, they're getting them with coffee and donuts and what have you, getting ready to go on their flight, and off they go. And so we have about an hour window to get these done. And it used to be, once we shot them, those guys would work the pictures, and when they returned that night, they were handing out envelopes to them. And that got to be a little bit much. So now they're getting them, editing them.
Well,
and then
actually, I
mailing
think
them.
the honor flight was saying that by the time these guys get off the plane after spending the day in Washington DC, they're so tired, they don't even think to go over to the table and pick up their.
Yeah, they're wiped out. It's a long day for anybody, but you get some of these people, and especially when we're doing World War II vets and stuff, when they're up there, upper 80s, 90s, they're ready to get home and get to bed. It's been a long day for them.
What's the rule of thumb? How far from the backdrop do you place the subject?
A minimum of 3 feet.
Yeah.
The farther you are away from it, the more you're gonna soften that background.
Yeah, the last thing you want is for the backdrop to, show detail, be sharp. And that's why a lot of people, I had an incident at one of the honor flights, and they were gonna neatly fold up this, backdrop for me. Well, you don't want that either, because you'll have nice, neat, square folds the next time you go to use it. So basically, you just scrunch that and throw it into the bag that it came in, any old way, because you want multi-directional creases and lines and things like that. And then by the time you soften it, it's really a nice effect. But yeah, 3 feet is the minimum. At that, and we work pretty tight. I mean, there's not a lot of room, so it's about 3 feet where the stool is from the backdrop during honor flight. And there was something else I was going to say. I can't think of what it was. Oh well, I'll think of it later.
Well, there's one thing, we're probably getting the gist of this, it would be impossible for us to do this with one photographer.
Oh yeah.
There's no way.
No.
I
In
think the
fact,
first time
I
we
would recommend that if we could get, like in this next one, when is it, the 24th?
Next
Yeah.
week.
Next 24th. If we could get 4 volunteers to come and not only maybe take a stint at shooting, but just watch it, I think it'll all make sense. And I don't know if it's just I think you guys don't want to get up at 4:30 in the morning. But,
And I've heard
for a good cause.
in doing photography for the years I've done it, you'd run into so many people saying, I'm a natural light shooter, I'm a natural light shooter. And the reality of it, the majority of those folks are scared of these lights. It brings fear to them. And realistically, that's the thing that we want to take away from tonight is educate you that you can get this stuff pretty reasonable. You don't have to get the big fancy lights like I've got in my studio. You can get some pretty manual stuff that you can take with you and use when you're doing family stuff or whatever it might be. You can use these lights for doing merchandise shoots. I just did a shoot for a guy that's creating a website. And so he brought a bunch of his product over to me and I set up my backdrop and I could soften the backdrop and everything with the lighting and do the shoot for him. Because he was trying to do it and he didn't obviously have the right equipment.
And I'm guessing a lot of you would like to take nice portraits of your grandkids and things like that. So we're gonna go over some things that you can do, possibly with the equipment you've already got, that you wouldn't have to add a whole lot to. This flash, I carry it in my bag all the time. If I have to shoot with flash on camera, this is what I do, but there are things that you can do with it. Now, if you shoot like this, you know what harsh shadows look like, because you're right in line with the lens, it's straight on, but all of the flashes anymore will tilt, rotate. You've got different types of softening things. This is a dome that you can get this, and it goes on by magnet. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that you can turn this all the way around. Maybe you can. It's a liar on me. And if you're in a room shooting indoors, and it's a white room or light colored walls, you can actually shoot like this, bounce the flash off the wall, and bring it back this way, and get a really nice soft light.
Or you can take the subject in the room, he's got that flash, you can point that flash towards me, and I could stand here and I could be his off-camera flash, where he's bouncing it. I've had guys, some of the classes I've taken over the years, they'll take a something, shooting a white, for example. They'll have a guy come over, open up his suit coat, and have his white shirt, and he'll bounce the flash off his white shirt onto the subject to soften it, because realistically, you try not to shoot directly onto a subject.
You're making
because I'm serious. I'm serious. And you can check, and this guy is, like I said, he's one of the world-renowned wedding photographers. You can go to his website and check him out. His name's Jerry Jones, and he is from Australia, and he lives in Vegas right now. And he and his wife are amazing photographers, and I have belonged to the Iowa division of the Professional Photographers of America, and once a year they would hold a weekend of seminars, 3-4 days of seminars. They'd bring speakers in, and they'd talk about all kinds of genres. And I took one of his seminar day classes at the.
This is in Las Vegas?
No, this is in Des Moines.
Oh,
He
Las Vegas, I know where this is going.
No, would bring in speakers, and so I've had a couple, and another one you can go to YouTube as well as Jerry, that you can get a lot of portrait information off of and watched over and over on YouTube, is Kurt Boclain, Boclain. And he specializes in high school senior portraits, but he goes over a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And he is an amazing, amazing photographer. He's been doing it for years. He's down in Louisiana, but they brought him in a couple different times to go over stuff, because he uses simplistic methods and his mannerisms, able to joke with his clients to get the expressions he wants is pretty amazing to watch. So, like I said, those are two individuals that I would throw out there. You can go and watch your YouTube stuff.
Yeah, there are a ton of YouTube videos, and you can watch, as many as you want. Throw out the ones that don't make sense to you, and go with the ones that seem to work, and just try different things. It's every day is a learning experience. I'm still learning.
I mean, that's the beauty of this is plagiarism. As a photographer, we bounce things off each other, we learn from one another, and like I said, when we did these classes, and they still do them out in Des Moines, I hadn't been belonged to them for a while. They, like I said, bring in people and do different genres, from landscape to products to portraitures, different things. And actually, there's a gentleman that used to teach class there every year that taught up at the Eastern Iowa Community College or something up in the Cedar Falls area. I'm not sure what that is. Jay, you know where that is? And like I said, he was very well known for coming to the weekend and holding multiple sections of the day for teaching photography. So we're going to throw a lot at you. You probably have questions. If you don't have our numbers, Jay can get them to you. You can email us. I'm on Facebook. Greg, his phone is in his pocket all the time, ready to be answered.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, what we want to do is
I don't recognize the number.
we want you not to be fearful of using light, because light is an amazing tool. You can shoot in the dark with light, create some different looks. You can shoot, like I said, in a bright room using flash. A lot of times people, why use the flash outside the sunshine? Depending on where you're sitting, I don't know how many times you look at a picture and you'll take a picture of the subject and your sockets are black. It's because you don't have the fill light to contradict that sunlight that's coming into your lens.
And that kind of gets back to the taking pictures of your grandkids. A lot of that is done outdoors. It might be at a playground or in a park or something like that. And what I best hours of the day are the same as for landscape photography, wildlife photography. High noon is no good, but you can work around it. But I like to try to always keep the, you've always heard, oh, you need the sun to your back, and that's the worst thing you do on a bright sunny day. Just turn around, shoot into the sun, use that sun as a rim light, and pop a little flash in there, like Tim says, to open up their eyes. And what I like to do is, and this would be something you've all got a flash of some kind, don't you? Yeah, most of you, yeah. Every camera brand has their own flash, and every camera brand that I know of has their own radio slate system. Just get one of these. It's the same one that I use for that. And you can take your pictures, get all focused in and zoom in where you want it, and then just do that, or bounce it if you're indoors. But get it off off the camera. And this work, I've done this kind of thing for as long as I can remember, working in newspaper and stuff. That was just a standard way of using flash. But anyway, I will go on to other things to think about.
What kind of flash is that right there?
What's that?
What is the brand of that flash?
This is the Godox,
Okay.
and I'm not here, harp on any one brand or anything like that. There's a lot of good stuff out there. But Godox has really risen to the top of the heap as far as the quality of their products, what they had to offer, the compatibility between different levels of. Normally you wouldn't think you'd be able to use this flash with studio flashes, but they all work off the same transmitters, the same radio frequencies, and they work seamlessly. I mean, there's no messing around with wires or cords or anything like that. Those were always, any PC cord, if you've been doing this long enough, you know the first thing that ever breaks is a PC cord when you really need it the most. And you always have to either carry extras or to say, oh, can't use flash today. And so these radio slates have come so far, and they're so reliable and accurate. I think Tim and I were talking that when we shoot the honor flight, he shoots in TTL and I shoot in manual. And I don't know, can you tell the difference?
I can't tell the difference.
Yeah, it used to be, the rule of thumb was.
Tell people what TTL is.
Thanks.
Tell them what
Through the lens,
through the lens meter.
yeah, it reads the exposure through the camera lens and all the computer stuff inside the camera and everything. And it puts out the exact amount of light that is needed based on what your aperture, shutter speed, and ISO are. And today it works better than it ever has. There were years ago that TTL was on the scene, and there would be times that if I shot a picture, say it was a gathering and somebody was wearing a white shirt and I'd shoot, it would close down, it wouldn't give enough light because it was reading too much of that white shirt. But then I'd go to the next guy and he'd be wearing a dark suit coat and it overexposed. But much better. I mean, it can still happen, but it's much better now.
And like Greg was saying, with these new operations, I've switched to a Godox for my new camera, and I'm working at getting other stuff that'll actually operate my white lightnings. But like he was saying, you needed triggers and stuff that was different. And so what I would use for my white lightnings is this gets plugged into the side of my white lightning, and this is my receiver, and then this sits on the camera, this is my transmitter. So when I shoot a flash like that, you need a hot shoe to make that flash work because they don't sync up. So again, if you're not real familiar with things, again, this has been a very good tool for me over the years, but they've done so much better at what they create. And these Godoxes are, say, an amazing.
In a nutshell, these are called smart triggers. Those are called dumb triggers.
Because they're limited what you can do with them. I mean, I have 4 channels on here as well, so I can talk to different flashes. But again, this system is, like I say, older. They do have some newer stuff. Like I said, this is a receiver as well where you can put your flash on there and it screws on. And they're dummy proof. They're very easy to use. But I don't know if they even make them now for the new mirrorless systems. Again, I haven't looked into it. Where these Godoxes, he's got the one for his Canon, I got the one for the Sony, and they're a very good system. And like I said, I'm just learning that one. So you talk about the fear factor. When I shot the Honor Flight, I went with my trusty old Canon 5D Mark IV because I know what I can do with that with my white lightnings until I get more comfortable shooting portraits with this.
What's the white lightning?
White Lightning is a gentleman back decades ago by the name of Paul C. Buff. He created a light product that's been true tested for decades. And he's come up with the White Lightning version. He's got the Einstein. He's even got a newer version out, I think the B or something like that, where they're even more compact. You can actually go to Paul C. Buff and you can see them. And they have little battery packs that can go with them as well. I like them because I'm familiar with it, it's easy. There's a slide bar on them for setting, like he was saying, my main light would be maybe at a quarter, where my backlight would be a 16th. And so I could set my lighting using the slides on them. And then there's also the modeling light capability as well, where these are they're just sleeker. He does a lot of work going to John Deere or to Genesis or those places. So he's got it set up easy, doing stuff in that setting where the majority of mine used to be in-house in my studio. And then I have a suitcase, I pack everything up and I go to a wedding or I go to a business and do my shootings there. But then I even got tired of taking White Lightning, so then I used to have half dozen Canon flashes that I could sync and I could set them
So the
up.
white lightning is a flash?
It's a flash.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've evolved over the years, but they're still kind of bulletproof, heavy duty, best used in the studio, given your options today. But there's still people that can take them out into the field, and they're, for the most part, more powerful. I don't feel that I need that much power. I'm not lighting a football field. When I was in paper, we had 8 White Lightnings clamped to the rafters over the tax layer, which was the market was in fact. And we fired them with radio slaves, and we could light the whole, whether it was a hockey arena or basketball or whatever, we'd light the whole floor, just by the way we had those pointed and how we had them set up. And then the only thing we had to do was, when we went there for an assignment, we'd have to climb up, walk around the catwalk and turn each one of them on. And then when we were ready to go, we had to go back up there and turn them all off. We never figured out an easier way to do that. I'm sure there was one. Okay. So, but anyway, yeah, that's, in a nutshell, that's what White Lightnings are. They're low tech, but they're reliable, they're accurate. Like Tim was saying, to adjust the power settings, there's a slider on the back. So, I mean, you would have to, if you were taking pictures and you decided that the light ratio wasn't right, you would literally have to walk over to it and, change the slider a little bit and come back and maybe you have to do it, once or twice. But we've become so lazy as photographers. That's an awful lot to ask. And like Tim said, they're heavy. And it takes a big case to load. I've got a case with 4 of them, and it's on wheels. And
You gotta have extension cords and you have to have outlets.
Yeah.
Or I have battery packs that you can charge the battery pack and you can plug in, you can get so many flashes on it. So again, it's not that, yeah, I guess you're kind of lazy in a certain degree, but it's inconvenient somehow taking those studio lights out. In my house, when I had the studio, I actually had rafter bars up there and I had my 4 lights set up to where I can move them around just with the pulley system, and it was on scissors and you can pull them down, pull them back up.
Didn't use any light stands.
Yeah, so it's made it super easy. And your outlets are up above, so you just plug into them, and you can move those lights around. So that was a handy way of doing it. But going out in the work world where we do, I mean, when you look at seniors, very little is done in a studio. The better photographers do a combination, they'll do a studio setting, an outdoor setting, as well as, like I said, Greg does this. And these are a great light that's easy to use out in the field as well. So,
If I wanted to take better images of my grandkids, okay,
Indoors or outdoors?
indoor and outdoor,
Okay.
would I see over there, I see that setup, you got a camera, you got a transmitter, you've got your regular flash, and you got an umbrella, okay? An umbrella or a softbox, if I was gonna purchase one thing to take a better picture of my grandkids.
you can actually, this is the newest thing, this would be my recommendation.
A softbox.
And what this does is you're shooting in and it's coming out, and you can soften that light a little bit easier. Well, you can do here, but it doesn't have the skimmer on it, okay? This works great, like I said, when I was shooting weddings, I could set those up on the altar, get my wedding party up there, and I could shoot using the umbrellas. And this wasn't really an option back in that at that time frame. And so umbrellas are a great way because, like this one here, you can shoot through it, and then you can create the soft
If you get on the
box.
internet, you're gonna see all kinds of videos about one light portrait setups, and they go with something like this. It's mounted to a stand with a head on it,
Like I said,
and
these
the
heads
flash shoots straight through it. Now, the only one problem
So
with
the
that.
flash is about 9 digits shooting through it.
Right, and it's back here, and it shoots straight through.
Okay.
versus shooting into it. See here, you're shooting into it, and the smaller the umbrella, the smaller it comes out. So I had some big umbrellas I'd take to a wedding, because that way I could take that light and really spread it out. So if I had a wedding party of, 6 on each side, plus the bride and groom, you're talking, 14 people, you gotta move that light so it's nice and even over the whole wedding party. Here, you can direct the light individually, so if you're doing your grandkids or something of that nature, this is a great thing. I think that sells these here. It's the same deal. What I like about these is that flash is secure in the back of it. And like I said, if it gets knocked over by one of your grandkids, chances of doing damage to that flash is pretty minimal. So this, and like I said, this is a great purchase. And like I said, they have these back deals that your flash gets clamped right inside it, and it's a good
What
secure
are those
tool.
softboxes sell for?
Just like you can tell us been through the mills, but so I don't have an idea. But I think Ted still sells this brand.
This is what the thing looks like, and it's not dedicated to any particular brand of flash. The flash goes in here, and this screws down. There's a little arm right here that goes down, it's rubberized that holds it in place. The other nice thing about it is, this is where your umbrella goes in, right there. So it hits in the center of the umbrella, and then the light goes out, proportionately in all directions.
So you
So that's really nice. And these things you can't break
You
these.
can have the box, or you can have like that where you still shoot the umbrella. And then the other thing I use when I use one light system is I have a reflector of some sort. And that way, if I use what we call it, when you shoot from the side, it's called rim-ramp lighting. So you're shooting across the subject, you're getting that shadow over here about a third of the way over on the nose. And then the light comes off of the reflector, or your second light is kind of a fill light, and giving maybe a little hair light to it.
About a month ago, I saw a picture you shot of a young girl, she was kind of laying down, and it was just beautifully lit. It was just perfect. Do you remember that shot?
Yep, it's
Was that one light, two
That
lights?
was 2 lights and a reflector. So my typical setup would be, down in my studio, is I would have the reflector about here. I would have a second light, probably use Greg's setup here because it's easier to show.
Don't touch my stuff.
So like, Greg uses the snoot or the back light, where I don't. Again, just different philosophies or different thinking. And so So what I do here is I'll have my subject, you probably, these people are on one side are gonna be able to see, but I'll take, and I have a reflector using that light there, that's the main light, and it's shooting like so. So get your subject sitting here. And in her case, I had a table in front of her that is the one I'm thinking of. I had her arms on the table so I could get a nice picture of her. So I got enough light movement that I can get my main light, I can soften this side of the light and get that shadow I want on one side of the nose.
Oh, it was perfectly lit.
So like I said, I use a 2-light system, and because my old studio, I had 4 lights. Here in my condo, I don't. So again, you kind of go with what you have, and you still can create the look that you want. But like here, I use this as my, what I call my hair light. And so typically when I'm setting my subject here, it's shooting over their shoulder, catching a little bit of this hair, and giving a little bit of softness here, where here it's shooting across the face and creating that shadow on the other side. So when you have a light set up here, it's called Riverbend. This is called the hair light, and sometimes you'll see them where they can actually sit up above their head. If you have a boom that you got your light setting on, you can actually set it up behind you a little bit out of the way. But like I said, Greg can do that with his snoot behind the subject as well. He can light behind them and also the backdrop to lighten it. Does that make sense? The other lighting, if it shoots straight on, that's sometimes not as appealing. They call that flat lighting. You'll see, if you look at somebody using flat lighting, you'll see what we call a butterfly shadow underneath their nose. And to me, it's just not as appealing. And you can get away with that a little bit if you have a reflector underneath them, kind of help fill that up. But again, simple, and I think is most of what everybody's looking for. And I think, Jay, if you would feel comfortable, again, if you can put the flash on the camera and bounce it, but you can also, off the camera, is going to give you more flexibility because you're going to be able to create some different shadows and some different catch lights in their eyes. Greg, you got anything to add to that?
No, you covered it pretty well.
Is there a ratio that you use for the power settings on the 2 lights there?
And I use white lightnings. He uses these, so
Well, the ratio is the same regardless of what kind of lights you're using. Like I said, this one, for a portrait like this, I would normally set it on manual for about 1/8 power. And this one would be like 1/16, so like 1 stop. I'll go 1 to 2 stop difference, depending on the subject sometimes if I've got that kind of time. But like I say, if we're going fast, a 1 stop variation seems to work pretty well in most cases. So, I mean, there's a lot of portraits that will come back. You know, the guy will get up from the honor flight and get up and start walking away, and the next guy will be coming in and I'll think, oh man, if I could have just moved that light a little bit. But it is what it is, and the editors are incredible at solving my problems, making up for my mistakes.
yeah, giving, and again, it's something with giving them, so they're not going to be as critical. But the nice thing is it's memento that their family also will have as well for down.
I think some of them end up being used for their obituary pictures because they don't have anything, else that's, recent. And they are looking pretty good, and the families want the people who might read it in the newspaper to say, yeah, he served, he was in Vietnam, he was in World War II. And so, that makes it, my job more satisfying knowing that it's got a good reason to be shot and it's used and anyway. But getting back to normal, like what Jay had asked about, I could see everybody in here buying 1 light stand, 1 umbrella of whatever kind they like, and either go with the flash they've got, and then they would have to buy a trigger of some kind, whether it was a smart trigger or a dumb trigger. I forgot to ask. I asked Ted if he had anything good at the store, and he said the ProMasters that they've got there right now are really pretty good. And they're what I call a dumb trigger. So you'd be shooting your flash on manual. But the beauty of that is, it used to be, you're like, oh my God, am I getting the flash I needed when you were shooting film? But now everybody can look on the back of their camera and see what their exposure is, if it's right or not. And then you just make a correction if it's overexposed or underexposed. So you've got, what we used to do years ago with Polaroids, on your camera, and it's slick and it doesn't take any time at all, and it works. So, I mean, a simple, inexpensive light stand, a simple, inexpensive umbrella. These, by the way, are not really soft boxes. They're called Broly boxes. So if you were to go to Camera Corner or wherever and look to buy one, and they're not expensive, they're like $40. And that's kind of why I go to these, because every once in a while somebody will knock one over, and then I'm out for $40 instead of $200. Some of the soft boxes that you can buy today are ungodly expensive, but they work. And typically, a soft box, especially the ones that have the louvers in them, they're soft, but they're very directional. So you can kind of sculpt it a little bit to get exactly what you want. These throw out soft light, but it's not quite as controllable. But they're cheaper. They're easier to set up.
Would this be softer than what the?
What's that?
Would this be softer than the box?
It'd probably be about the same as the box. It's shooting the light into a aluminized surface that will throw it back out, but it comes out really soft. But like I said, it's not quite as directional. Some of these square soft boxes that have the fins that go around there, and where the actual fabric is recessed a little bit, and then you get what they call an egg crate that goes on there, and that directs the light even more. You've got a little more control, but it's, like I said, they're more expensive. For a casual user, I don't know that I'd recommend it. These are so cheap and they work so well, and they don't take up a lot of space. One thing, when I go on an assignment where I'm setting up a mini studio, I'll have a backdrop, something like this one, and I'll have these 3 lights and that stool, and I can set it all up in 20 minutes, they're down in 20 minutes, and there just isn't a lot of stuff that can go wrong. There's no cords going to a battery pack, there's no cords going to the camera, it's just, everything works. And again, I don't want to plug any particular brand, but Kodak's has got it going right now. And for what you get, they're not that expensive. And if you get a flash, a small one, like a non-camera flash, like Tim was showing, or like I was showing with the round dome head, you can use that, put that in your bag, and with that same transmitter, you can go to one of these and combine that with these and do all kinds of things. They make all kinds of different flash units, and they'll all work off the same channels on the same transmitter. So,
And the beauty is you can go talk to Ted. Ted knows we're doing this tonight. So if you go talk to Ted or Doug, they can steer you in the direction, either the Godoxes or the ProMasters, which are your 2 more affordable units, and help you kind of get you in the direction that you might want to get. Like I said, backdrop wise, that's a portable one I've used, Greg Termine on that. They're super easy to set up there now. And so like I said, you can get different backgrounds. This one's nice and soft, so when you're using a 1 or 2 light system, it's not a dark backdrop. Where when we use the muslins, they're a lot heavier material, and you want your better lighting. So like I said, that's why I use my white lightings at the airport.
but I have a feeling that most of you are thinking about just shooting off camera flash either in a living room or outdoors, something like that. And So then backdrops don't even come into play. But if you had only one light that you could use, I would suggest you at least put it on a light stand with a transmitter, whether it's a smart one or a dumb one, and have the sun, backlit, and then fill with that one light. And I think that would probably give you the most pleasing effect and very easy to do. And, after you play with it a little bit, it all makes sense, and you become an expert at it in no time. Yes?
I don't know what Jay's got planned for breaks, but you guys been going for an hour now. Do you need a little?
I'm just getting warmed up.
Okay. That's what I was.
You wanna take a little break, get a drink, and,
Yeah.
write down your questions, and we'll get back and show you.
We'll have a
some-
serious break where we like get in the refrigerator and stuff, right?
No, let's take a break now.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah, take a break now.
Subjects.